a fractured alliance on the brink. The public admission of divergent U.S. Israeli objectives on Iran reveals a critical strategic vulnerability being exploited by Tehran.
The recent Iranian missile strike on the Haifa oil refinery, a facility responsible for half of Israel's domestic fuel, represents a significant escalation in Tehran's direct confrontation with Israel. This attack occurs against the backdrop of a stark revelation from the U.S.
Director of National Intelligence, who has publicly acknowledged a fundamental misalignment between Washington and Jerusalem regarding end-state goals for potential conflict with Iran. This distance creates a dangerous operational ambiguity, effectively granting Iran's Revolutionary Guard greater latitude to conduct calibrated strikes aimed at degrading Israeli infrastructure without triggering a unified, overwhelming Western response.
The immediate restoration of power and lack of casualties suggest a precision attack designed to demonstrate capability and inflict economic pain rather than maximize human toll, a tactic intended to test and strain the already visible fissures in the Allied front.
The calculus of controlled escalation. Iran is executing a high-risk strategy that leverages Allied disunity to achieve regional deterrence while avoiding a full-scale war. The targeting of the Haifa refinery is not an isolated event but a deliberate component of Iran's asymmetric warfare doctrine, which seeks to offset conventional military disadvantages by striking critical national infrastructure.
Historically, Iran has relied on proxy forces to maintain plausible deniability, but this direct missile attack signifies a bold shift towards overt, state-on-state military action, likely calculated during a perceived window of Allied indecision. The geopolitical context is defined by a U.S.
strategic pivot that prioritizes great power competition with China and Russia, inherently deprioritizing a large-scale military entanglement in the Middle East. Conversely, Israel views an existential threat from a nuclear-capable Iran as its primary national security challenge.
This divergence creates a security dilemma where Iran can incrementally raise the stakes, betting that the U.S. will restrain Israeli retaliation to prevent a broader regional conflagration that would divert American resources from other global theaters.
Decoding the attack's strategic signature. The Haifa strike was a multi-domain probe testing Israeli defense systems, Allied cohesion, and economic resilience simultaneously. The technical execution of the attack provides a deep analytical read into Iranian capabilities and intent.
The successful penetration of Israeli air defenses to hit a high-value, fixed target indicates advancements in Iranian missile technology and possibly the use of sophisticated countermeasures against the Iron Dome and David's sling systems. The selection of a target responsible for 50% of domestic fuel is a deliberate attack on national economic security, aiming to spike energy costs, disrupt logistics, and create public pressure on the Israeli government.
Furthermore, the immediate claim of responsibility by the Revolutionary Guard as opposed to a proxy serves a dual purpose. It reinforces Iran's deterrence posture by showcasing direct accountability and strength, while also forcing the U.S. and Israel into a public response cycle that will highlight their strategic disagreements.
This creates a feedback loop where public admissions of disunity incentivize further Iranian probing, as the perceived cost of such actions is judged to be manageably low.
The inevitability of miscalculation. The current trajectory points towards an uncontrolled escalation, as restrained responses validate Iran's risk calculus and embolden further aggression. The strategic verdict is that the status quo of public Allied disalignment is unsustainable and actively dangerous.
The U.S. intelligence chief's admission, while perhaps intended as a sobering assessment, functionally signals to Tehran a lack of resolve, encouraging more audacious strikes like the one on Haifa.
The predicted consequence is a gradual normalization of violence against critical Israeli infrastructure, which will eventually compel Israel to execute a unilateral military response disproportionate enough to re-establish deterrence potentially against U.S. Council.
This creates the highest probability risk pathway, a major Israeli counterstrike on Iranian soil that forces the U.S. into the conflict not by choice, but by necessity, to protect its regional assets and prevent a total collapse of the regional order.
The critical next step for the alliance is a clandestine but absolute resynchronization of red lines and retaliatory protocols, moving disagreements from public discourse back into sealed diplomatic channels to present a unified and unpredictable front to Tehran.